Hello and welcome to our latest episode of In the Flow with Robin Wilt, your spiritual CFO, and myself, Jessica Kay. So today we have something very exciting. Robin is bringing us her latest offering, Personal Money Matrix. So Robin, tell us all about it. We want to know.
Yeah, actually, I'm also like very interested in it because it was literally just channeled to me last week, I believe. And I just love it when I get new downloads and when I get new insights about stuff. So, what I have been shown, I'm sure I will be shown more. Um, right, we all have the things that make up our financial reality. And this is what my guides were telling me is our money matrix. So your money matrix includes your income, it includes your debt, it includes how you feel about money, where you currently are with money. It also shows where your blockages are. It's like this little package of your financial energy in a way. Um, it can show you, right, like when I'm tuning into somebody's energy and into their money matrix, it can show us different methods that that person could use for expanding their revenue, for maybe expanding savings or just changes that they could make in their money reality. Um, and I think also just for me, like seeing the energetic aspect of it was really cool because a lot of times we see the physical energy of our finances and we know how it makes us feel. And I think we identify a lot with it, right? That it's ours, but it kind of seeing it as separate from us and separate from our energy was it was helpful because it's like, oh, okay, this isn't I think it can take away some of that shame that we can have around money, where we look at it as something that's a little bit separate from us. It's still ours because it's our individual matrix, but it actually allows us for more expansion and more energy to kind of come in and flow around, right? And anytime we bring fresh new energy into something, it's going to allow for more expansion, for more understanding, for more grace. And it's funny because I've been kind of wanting to also look at, I use astrology a lot, and of course, I look at people's money houses, but I'm curious to see how people's money houses in astrology kind of tie in with their money matrix. And maybe that'll be the next thing I play around with. That's been kind of coming to me for a while now. So, a lot of times, I'm sure Jessica can can attest to this. I was in a mentoring session earlier, and this, I was sharing this with my client. A lot of times you're getting like on the job training. It's like you're in a session with somebody and you're channeled these things, or all of a sudden your guides are like, oh, do this for your client. It's like we're constantly learning and evolving about how we can help our clients and how we can show up. So I really love it. I think for a while it was hard for me, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I love it when I see new things and kind of new concepts come through. So like I said, it literally was just last week, but it's like, well, this would be interesting to chat about it. And then I'm also offering, so you guys won't be able to catch this one because we're recording this on the 15th, and I'm offering this free class tonight on the 15th. But I would imagine that I will continue to talk about it and teach about it, just because I think there's a lot of juicy information for people in this, this energetic container that is called your personal money matrix. So, yeah, how does that, do you kind of resonate with that, Jessica? Like, does it?
Yeah, I love it. Well, and we're so multifaceted as beings, and it's really helpful to just take something and put it in this objective space and then to look at it with somebody else. And your background is in finance, mine's in mental health. So it's really helpful to have somebody who, like, that's what you do. You look at finances and to partner with, to look at it. And also, you're so intuitive and really supportive. So I actually would feel really safe talking to you about my finances and looking at it differently. And then all of the dimensions that you bring in, because you're 100% right. It's not just about a budget. It is about the energy that we have around money. It is about our feelings around it. There's so much that goes into this and how we manifest it, how it manifests in our life, what gain and loss looks like. So it's really a complicated situation. And, as a therapist, it's like, well, if you had a complicated situation, you'd go talk to a therapist. Well, if you have a complicated money situation, which I would say everybody who's alive right now has a complicated money situation. So having somebody give you a framework to view your money, to look at the different aspects, to look at the energy around it, your limiting beliefs, your feelings, that feels very supportive and like right on time. So I think this is an amazing offering. I'm so excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, I'm again, like I shared, like I feel like I learn so much when I'm holding space for people and when I'm sharing these kinds of things. Um, because there's so much that we don't know and so much that we don't see about how we relate to money and how much our self-worth ties into it, right? For instance, in astrology, I was chatting with a different client earlier this morning about how our second house of finances, it's our material possessions, but it's also our self-worth. I know we've chatted about this before too. Jessica and I have on the show. It's something that we don't really recognize as being tied to how we feel about money or how we look at money. And there's a pair of little birds out on my deck. I don't even know what they are, but I just love it when I get animal messages when I'm doing all my spiritual jazz. So anyway, I usually do get birds. Anywho, not sure what that means, but there was a pair of them and they were birds that I've never seen before. Let me see if there's any messages coming through. Yeah, so what my guides are telling me with this bird energy that just came through, when we are kind of in our own reality, and I'm saying reality in quotes, if you guys are listening to this and not seeing the video, um, everything that we kind of do as human beings is limited in a way because we're looking at it through our humanness, right? When we choose to come down to earth, we choose to forget. We choose to forget our connection to source. We choose to see like all of these illusions that live in the physical world. But really, like I would imagine that at its core, that all of us have a personal money matrix that fits our own individual needs, right? Even if you happen to be somebody who has struggled with being homeless or losing their house, like there are still lessons that our soul wants to learn and wants to experience. And I think as people, and right, because of our humanness, we put a lot of shame and guilt on those experiences. But it also adds a lot of value to understanding how this world works, right? I is like some people who are homeless, I've chatted with, a few people in the past that it was a choice, right? They didn't want to be in our current system. They didn't want to be kind of tied down to like going to work every day and being a cog in the system. So it may like we may not understand somebody else's personal money matrix, but I always believe there's a divine design and that things change and evolve and grow. And, just because you are where you are currently now doesn't mean that that can't grow and that that can't change. I mean, I'll share with y'all personally. The last 3 years have been very challenging for me financially. When I quit my corporate job, I had no idea that things were going to be this challenging. So it's kind of what led me into recognizing what I wanted to help people with because I saw how much shame there is around it, right? I'm not saying that I'm like awakened or that I'm not, I'm not still human or that I'm like perfect, but I have a lot of awareness around spirituality and my life and my pattern. So when I started to think about it, I'm like, wow, if I'm struggling this much with it and I'm connected to source, I can't imagine like people who don't have this connection, like how they're dealing with these financial things that are coming up, these financial wounds that are wanting to be healed. So it really kind of lit a fire under my ass to really step forward and help people with that. And obviously, like as I'm offering these things for people, I'm also learning and healing and growing. Um, the other thing that Spirit has shown me recently that I think is important to chat about here is And literally, I just noticed this in my own reality. So again, I'm going to continue to learn and grow around it. But I think a lot of times we assume that when we have a need, that we have to automatically connect it with money, right? So for instance, if you're like, oh, I need a massage, or I need a piece of furniture for my house. In our heads, we think, oh, I need to go out and hustle and I need to make the money so I can buy this thing. But so often in my life, I have seen where I've just surrendered it, where I'm like, okay, I need this thing at some point. Like, let me just kind of put it out to the universe. And somebody will give me a massage, right? Like, you might get a gift card for a massage. You might have somebody clean out their house and get rid of some furniture and give you like a house full of furniture, which is actually very much a part of my personal money matrix, is like learning to receive and learning to allow others to support me. So the universe comes in with these really cool ways, and it shows me that I don't need to, because, right, if somebody hadn't given me those things, what would have been the alternative? I would have had to go out, work for those hours, turn around and spend the money, which, there's beauty in that as well. But if I'm personally learning to receive, it would make sense that it may not actually require me directly making money to buy those things. So that's another huge thing that I feel like we can open up to receiving more. We can open up to supporting one another more. Asking people, like when you're getting rid of things or when you're kind of upgrading in your own life, asking your loved ones. Yeah, Allie's looking my face. Um, asking your loved ones, hey, could you use these things that I'm kind of getting rid of? It really does start to help you to see that your financial reality is so much more than maybe the amount of money that you have in the bank, right? It allows you to like open up to deeper forms of abundance. Because for me, if I talk about money or if I talk about abundance, it's not just paper money. It is support, and it is the abundance that surround us, like in all areas of our life. So I believe that it's all connected. Have you had situations like that with like manifesting, or where you've seen these kind of things happen in your life where you've been
Yeah,
given things or
it's interesting. I have, my nodal access is in the 2-8, which is about my money and other people's money. And I'm really in my North Node's in the eighth house. So it is around receivership. And as you're saying, things like all these little bing, bing, bing things are going off. But one of the interesting stories I have is around my student loan debt. I went to undergrad, I went to grad school to become a social worker, and I accrued lots of debt, like crazy amounts of debt. And then there's compounding interest and all of that. And at one point, I was just like, I'm done. Like, I am done with this. I paid on it for probably 5 years, but in order for it to be forgiven, you have to have 10 years. And so I went into forbearance, which means I didn't pay. And you can only do that for so long. But I just said, universe, I am trusting that this is going to be taken care of. It's not within my capacity right now to pay $1,000 a month for student loans. And so it was just an interesting turn of events where I had my 3 years of forbearance, and then we went into COVID. I didn't have to pay. And then there were all of these amazing programs that came out of it. And last year, I had $100,000 of debt that was forgiven. And that still like blows my mind. Because I was just like, I get it. And it would require a lot, because housing prices in Gainesville are no joke. Like it costs a lot of money to be in a home, and electricity and everything. So I just said, I need help with this. And it was like, okay, this is a place where I can lean in and use the resources that are available. And then I just kept trusting, because I got the sense like, you don't ever have to worry about this again. And even though like it would, it's like I would get these notices like it's coming to the end and it's coming to, and I'm like, I'm going to trust you, universe. I'm going to trust you. And it just happened. Like I never had to pay again. Because, it's one thing to start paying, but when it's like, oh, by the way, you need to come up with $1,000 a month. Yeah. So it was this interesting stretch for me. And that's kind of what COVID was in general. That whole situation just allowed me to stretch and trust and stretch and trust. And a lot of things have shifted because of that. So it's interesting because, I'm in a similar, situation where my air conditioner went out and then my heater went out. And in the back of my mind, the universe is saying, just trust, Jessica. Like, I'll increase your capacity to trust and see where this all goes. So, yeah, I mean, money's an interesting thing. It is not easy. I've been out of debt many times in my life, and I am not currently in one of those times. And it's a stretch to be like, well, I own a home now, so that means when stuff breaks, you got to fix it. We've become used to cold air and hot water. So I'm just like leaning into all of this and saying, okay, just like, with money, with, my job and different raises that have come through. And that's where I'm like, okay, universe, I need this amount of money to help me and my husband survive. And then out of nowhere, stuff comes through. So, um, needless to say, my finances are not perfect, but when I can really like listen and lean into it, amazing things happen. And it requires so much trust. And it's such a stretch because for me, there's so much fear around money and what happens if you don't have it. Like, am I going to be able to eat? Am I going to be on the streets? So yeah, money's a very complicated topic. So it's wonderful that you've created a system to kind of look at it in an objective way. And so even talking to you about that, I'm just like all these things like ping, 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 like triggers left and right. So yeah, we definitely, I think as a society on the individual level could definitely get some healing around that and realizing, like you said, that when we're in alignment, we can manifest amazing things, and that takes money out of the equation.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think the other thing that was like when I started to really kind of come up against some of the more challenging parts of my personal money journey, like you said, it brings up so much fear and shame and like those lower level energies for us. And it really does knock us out of that trust and that faith, right? Because we see things, it's hard because we see things in the physical and we see reality. Again, with the quotation marks, like we see the reality, but we're still human beings. Like we still live on this physical plane. So it's really hard, which I will say that I feel like spiritual people can also go the other way, where it's like, oh, I'm just going to manifest my way to $250,000 this week. Like I went through that phase too, where I was like, I used to be super practical and then I started drinking the Kool-Aid and I just was like, oh, I'm going to manifest myself out of this. And I'm like, oh, actually I have to have a combination of the both, which is what I really love to do actually. And what I offer my clients is like bringing that balance of the practical as well as the spiritual, because they are connected. One is related to the other, but you can't just use one and completely ignore the other, right? Like I can't just sit somewhere and like, oh, I'm just going to manifest, my student loan balance to zero. Like, yes, it plays a part, but you might have to put some footwork behind it. You might have to make some calls. You might have to reach out. And to be honest with y'all, like, I'm not supposed to share too much about this because of anonymity. Anonymity. I don't know. I have such a hard time with that word. But I ended up working a 12-step program around money because just so much was being triggered for me. And I found myself at the point where I was like, I needed support and I felt so much shame around it. And I felt so much just hopelessness, which is so weird because I had never felt that way about money. Yeah. Like when I look back, actually, I shouldn't say that. I had, but in like other ways that weren't directly tied with, so same thing, like I also have my nodal axis, my south and my north node, and my second and my eighth houses. So a lot about money, a lot about debt. I've definitely had really interesting situations happen in my life around finances and debt. Like some of them that had nothing to do with me and weren't my fault at all, but I had to like deal with the repercussions about that. I feel like we could do a whole nother episode on um so just briefly to share with y'all, when I was early 30s, I think my ex-husband and I found out that the first house that we had bought, we found out like 5 years after being there that the builder had built it on the wrong lot. And the people who owned So our house was on these people's lot, and our lot was actually the empty one next door. So instead of these people just swapping with us, they sued us. And I'm not kidding you, it was like 5 years of just stress and like anxiety. I remember being so sick over it, and like just it's a long story to go into, so I won't go into it too much now. But at that point in my life, I had savings. We didn't have credit card debt. We had old people credit. Like I was early 30s probably, I guess, and I had like 850 credit score. Right, my whole perfectionism around money. And then we finally got to the point where after researched it, like I mean, we went to attorneys, like it literally was like 4 or 5 years of like trying to figure out how to handle this because those people were not budging. We finally decided to file for bankruptcy. And I'm not kidding you, that was one of the hardest decisions up till that point in my life that I actually probably still that I have ever made because I associated so much of my identity with that near perfect credit score, right? To be early 30s and to walk into a bank. I mean, people like, right, if my connection to my worth was so tied in with money and like my credit score and like how much I had worked to build it up over, 20 years or however many 15 years at that point. Um, that was a huge, 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 huge part of my spiritual awakening was like releasing myself from that over identification that I had with where I was financially. So that has definitely played a big part in how I look at finances and how I look at money. Yeah, I saw your face whenever I was chatting about that, Jessica. It is like the weirdest
Oh my gosh, that's just
situation.
like horrifying. Like I can, I've never built a house, but I can imagine like that would be so exciting. Like that's like been the dream, one day. Um, and to have all of that happen, like that would be devastating. And then to not, and that's where it's like that nodal access, like, of course they sued you because you know, that's what's in your chart. So it's like, okay, we're going through this. And that's what I think too, like that's the growth edges, just like, you mentioned manifesting my student loans being paid off. Every single moment of that was terrifying. Like it wasn't me sitting on a cushion in bliss. It was, Jessica, are you going to believe that the universe is with you and trust them? And are you going to, walk what you talk or not? Because I have worked in my life, like there's very, very small periods of time where I've only worked one job. At one point I was working like two or three and going to school. Like that was actually like a common thing, even through high school, like work a job, go to school, go to college, work a job, work a couple jobs, work some more, grad school jobs, internships. So it's so easy for me to just be like, I'm going to put my nose down to the grindstone. I'm going to work myself silly until I'm exhausted. I'm going to make all of this go away. And when I got into my mid to late 30s, it was like, nope, no more. Like we are going to work on trust. And like when my water heater went out and it was like, oh, it's going to be this much, it's going to be this much, it's going to be this much. And I literally had a full meltdown, like, which was I completely shut down in Home Depot. There were no words. I was like, I can't, I told my husband, I was like, you talk to them about it. I went out, I walked around the plant aisle and was just like completely out of my mind. And I had become so triggered and shut down. Remembering, like, I remember in my early 20s, I was in collections on one of my credit cards. And that's the only time that ever happened. I didn't understand what was happening, but it was so terrifying. And they were threatening, like, it was awful. And so, like, I was right back there, like 40 years old. I've got a great job. I've got a business I'm running. I've got credit. Like, I can make this work, but I am back to 20 years old thinking, what is going to happen? And am I going to need to continue to eat, ramen and green beans? Because that's what we were eating was ramen and green beans, but we had food. So it's like, whoa, like how do you just hit rewind for 20 years and then like so then I realized I was like, oh, I'm having a full meltdown about this. And so I need to nurture myself. And I won't lie, I did buy a couple plants because I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy a couple plants that smell really good and we're gonna plant these puppies. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to process. So I was like in the ground, in the dirt, processing all of that. And it was like, what does your highest guidance say? And the highest guidance was like, get what you need for the house, find that 0% credit, APR, which I did. Everything's going to be fine. They'll be able to do it quickly. And then every step of the way, I'm just like, oh, shell shocked with the cost of it. It's like everything's gonna be okay. Like just breathe. Just breathe. So even now, as they're literally out in my garage putting it up right now, I am just breathing because it's like, okay, we're doing this. So it's so funny to think, a house provides so much security and
Mm,
also the ability for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars overnight. And
yeah.
so it's like, wow, I really love my house and I'm going to lean into this and I'm going to lean into the universe helping me. And the fear is palpable, like on a moment to moment basis. And it's so interesting because I have worked through that so much in my life, like to where there's not a lot of things I fear, but I have this desire to control, and that's also showing up. So it's like, okay, this is really interesting. My Chiron is active, and we're seeing that there's issues around money and being able to support myself and feed myself and house myself and my family. So it's so funny, even. It's so hilarious in some ways. I just have to chuckle. And I realize how healing that is too. Like I can be like knotted up in fear and my husband will make me laugh or something funny will happen and then I'm in a completely different state. So I have just been sitting back looking at all of these transformations happening from moment to moment because this is really where I'm finding that there's deep-seated fear around money and being able to provide for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you because I think that is the antidote. Like we get triggered around money and the fear immediately comes in. So it's like our body has this visceral reaction of, oh my God, I'm right. Like we go to the worst case scenario. I'm going to lose my home. I'm not going to be able to have food on the table. How am I going to support myself? How am I going to support my family? I mean, these are things that like we struggle with on a very basic level. Like, and we don't even realize how for some of us, it can be like a daily thing, where it's like each day, depending on what period of your life you're in, or depending on what you struggle with, like it can be a daily thing. It's not even just when, issues come up, like a broken water heater, or, your car breaks down. It's like, it's something that every day you're like, oh my God, am I going to have, the resources to pay for my responsibilities. But I love like what you said, just tuning in with, and this is really what I've had to learn the past year, especially is like tuning in with God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, and just having that connection of like, okay, I'm feeling this way. Like, please guide me to my next steps. I think so often we feel like we have to figure it out ourselves. And I love the fact too that you were like, okay, let me buy some plants. Like, let me put my hands in the dirt. Like, let me connect with that earth energy because when we connect with Mother Earth, like, that's again like something that's helped me so much is like feeling the abundance of Mother Earth and like feeling that support and feeling like that's really where our so much of our abundance and our support comes from is our connection to Mother Earth. And like, because if you think about it, and not that I'm saying I want to be homeless or I'm not saying that anybody else wants to, but, back in the day, we did used to live in the woods or on the land or whatever. So it is kind of ironic that, I've chatted with quite a few people like, in sessions or just people that I know, like a lot of us have that fear of being homeless. And I'm like, well, isn't that ironic? Because we didn't like, I'm sure we had huts and, like some makeshift area, but it's interesting that that's can be like so important to us. But I'm excited for you that you're getting all these things done. Like, yay for a new water
Yeah.
heater.
It's exciting and it's also terrifying, that's where you're right. It's about, because in general, I've been able to navigate. Like, there's been this year is just like everything's coming for the money. Like, things are breaking, things need to be replaced. And like, pretty much everything that could possibly need to be fixed or replaced has happened this year. And I was like, oh, I'm good. I got this, made it through okay, 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 okay. And then this final one was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it really made me ask that question. Am I acting out of my fear or am I acting out of my alignment? And just realizing like my fear says, what is the cheapest way we can get this done, even if it only fixes it for 6 months? And my alignment was like, not the best decision. So it's really interesting to feel that stretch. And it's like, it's almost, well, I won't say it's almost, it is like for me, this year is hugely transformational. Ever since the eclipses, we got the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, which is very similar to my natal chart. So, like, everything is like my astrological chart is lighting up like a Christmas tree. And it was like, okay, we're going to keep coming for you until you lean into what's going on here. And that's what happened. It was like, okay, finally I have run up against something that has finally opened up that whatever's been festering and said, okay, you're not going to be able to think your way or, squeeze your way or work your way around this one. There is fear that still needs to be worked with. And how is that going to happen? So it's like, oh, I'm being stretched to surrender more and more, and I kind of love it. So it's like being on a roller coaster, like it's complete chaos and it's exciting because I thought that I had this figured out, and it's not about having it figured out. It's about, is there fear or is there trust? And there can't be, one or the other. And I literally was like all bundled up at dinner about it. And my husband made a joke and it was like hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. I was laughing, laughing, laughing. And it just felt so good. Like I felt myself like sighing and breathing and going into like, this amazing state of relaxation. And after that, I had to stop for a minute and I was like, what was I thinking about? Because like it was so far away from me. I couldn't even remember like how upset I was. And it was weird because it was like, okay, where was I? Because I wanted that orientation. Like, I want to be oriented to my fear because I'm feeling so good right now. And I realized it, but there was this desire. So I just touched it. And when I found it, I just touched it. I was like, oh, that's what it is. Okay. It's not important because it was like, oh, you're forgetting something. Yes, I am forgetting my fear right now. So I was like, oh, I'm forgetting that. Okay. And then I just went back to laughing and enjoying myself. And I have never had such a amazing huge shift happen. Like I know we all know that laughter is good and joy is good, but I literally felt it like night and day. Like in that moment, it was like whiplash. It happened so quick and it was unexpected. Like I didn't expect to find this joke so hilarious. So I was like, wow, like my father always said, like, laughter is good medicine. And in that moment, I was like, I see exactly how powerful it is. Because it was like I stepped out of one door and stepped into another. So yeah, any way that we can take this lightly or to just check in, because that's what I did. I was like, universe, what is going on? And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, we're doing this. Like you said you wanted to expand your capacity. So here we are. And for me, that's like, oh, okay, good. Like we're playing this little game with each other, which is like, we've got our boxing gloves on. I'm not actually going to get hurt in this, but this is for me to learn. And when you're like, oh, this is a learning opportunity, then it makes it a lot less scary. So that, like, just being so in tune with my guides and being aware of what's going on and just knowing, like, every morning I kind of set up where I talk to my angels and I'm just surrounded in this beautiful bubble. And I know that I'm safe and protected. So whatever happens, I see it. I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. I see where you're taking me. So let me pay attention. And it's not as scary because it doesn't feel like something is happening to me. It's like I signed up for this little game, and so we're gonna play it. And in the end, I'm going to be transformed. So then it's like, okay, it's not happening to me. When I look at the overwhelm, I'm like, okay, help me. And that's where I'm like, help me. There are times where I'm like, help me. Like we're doing this together and I'm having a really hard time. This is not okay. And I'm really upset and I really need some help. And right there, like I'm not alone in it. I don't feel abandoned. I feel supported. It's like, okay, it's like we've stretched you to your capacity. Like, okay, rest. And all those good self-care habits that don't necessarily have to do with money. Like, yes, I did buy some plants. But I also, did not take a hot bath because I didn't have hot water. But there was other things that I did, went on a walk and all of these beautiful signs. I had owls land and I had hawks land and I had baby birds born in my front door. So all these synchronicities, all these beautiful things happened that really helps me feel supported. So yeah, this money stuff is no joke. Like it's totally scary and I understand why there's fear around it. And I also think that, you know, as a collective we're being asked to transform it right now, to shift it. And that's why you're, getting these amazing downloads and giving us tools and inspirations and even having a conversation like sitting here, if we think about, where we started and where we're at now, like just talking about it, sharing this with you, like I won't lie, like I was like, oh, this is fun. We're doing a podcast. And then, oh, we're talking about stuff that's scary. Like, and now I'm just like, oh, it's okay though. Like I can feel it. Like I really feel like I'm just surrounded and held. So part of shame is not feeling safe and comfortable to talk about it or to share about it. We think that everybody has it together and that we're the only ones that don't. And that is not true. I know that I have looked like the person that has it all together. And I can tell you that I've always had some sort of money situation, and everybody I know has. And I would say, you know, next to sexual abuse, money is the next like biggest trigger that people don't want to talk about. And it's as rampant. Like everybody has problems with it. So the more we can talk about it, the more we can support each other with that. It's not taboo. Like we can talk about abuse that we may have had, we can talk about money problems that we may have had, and just feeling supported and easy to talk about stuff like that takes away some of that like trigger. It's like, who do you call and say, I'm really having a hard time right now because I have to buy a water heater and this is overwhelming, like thousands of dollars. So, because then, people want to help you, right? Oh, let's
Mm.
talk about it and you should do this. And it's like, I just need somebody to hear me because I am scared. Like, yes, I already know how to deal with it. It's not what I'm asking about. Like, help me.
Mhm. It's all of a sudden I had this realization. So actually quite a few things from like what you shared. I had an astrologer probably 4 years ago when her and I were looking at my chart, and I have the energy in Virgo in my North Node in my eighth house. And she was telling me, she's like, when Uranus goes over your
Oh,
Chiron, it's going to trigger some of this stuff for you, and it's going to kind of make you right, which for me, like those two areas are connected. It's all without getting into like the details of it. But she was saying like it's really going to force you to go there and to talk about a subject that's related to the eighth house that you probably don't really want to talk about. And I just had this aha moment because for me, I did kind of think it was about sex, because I've also had like a lot of body issues and issues around like feeling comfortable with my sexuality. But I just had this aha moment. I was like, yes, what is the other area in our life that like it's sex, it's money, it's these things that like we haven't been taught to openly speak about or to openly be seen in our feelings, right? It's like, because like if you're talking to somebody, you're like, yeah, whatever, it's a water heater, but we take for granted how much that water heater triggers in us. And actually, when we first connected, I was feeling into your Jessica gave me permission to feel in her space. I didn't just dive in there, but I kept seeing like it was more than like the foundation of your money reality or your money matrix being revitalized during this time period. It really is almost like the entire like the walls of it, the ceiling, which is what's happening in your house too, right? You're doing so much work on your house, like you're redoing the floors. It's like um because there's a lot of symbolism too in like the not only the personal growth that we do, but also in how that shows up in our physical reality. So Jessica asked for more capacity. So the universe is like, okay, we're going to give you capacity, but we have to tear down that old structure kind of pull up those weeds and pull up the energies that aren't serving you anymore, right? The beliefs, the fears, there's a lot of inner child stuff for you too during this. So I'm gonna if you let me see what else you're saying about that. But it makes sense, right? When you look at it that way, like, oh, I asked for capacity. I asked for, and I'm sure you probably asked for some other things. This is also like I went to a Lakota, right? Lakota sweat lodge on Friday this past week. And the I don't even know, I'm so bad with terminology sometimes. The what would you call, I don't know what you call him. The fire keeper? No, I don't, honestly, I don't know. I'm so like, don't beat me up. I forget names and stuff like that. So the person who was running the lodge, he was talking us through like each round and like what to pray on. And he's like, but be careful what you pray for. And it's true, right? Like we think, oh, I'm going to ask for more capacity and like it's just going to come with rainbows and unicorns and like it comes, but it comes a lot of times through kind of dredging up these wounds that we have been kind of stuffing down for years and years and years. It's like that cycle of healing that kind of has to happen where the layers continue to get peeled off. So in your let me just feel into this. So for sure for you, like I love that you said the laughter because I feel like that is another like hack that you can use like when you're in that state of like bringing the levity and the humor to it. And this is for anybody, right? This is also like really important for me. I had to almost like start kind of not making fun of myself in a mean way, but kind of bringing a lightness to the things that I was feeling because it felt so like deep and dark and heavy. And again, like that keeps us from our connection with source. But if we can bring that sense of laughter, like it raises our vibration enough that we're able to kind of see above it and like not get so bogged down in those lower level energies. So let me see. So like, do you remember like when you were little, something happening with your family around, like maybe your parents were afraid of losing their home or like something kind of happened where they had a lot of like kind of money things that were going on that you might have picked up since you're sensitive?
Yeah, I mean, my mom, after I have two brothers, but after my first brother was born, my mom shifted from being like a bank manager to cleaning houses. So like that's huge because it just, we had to go places and do things and school and whatnot. So that was huge. I mean, there was a lot of throughout my whole childhood, there was a lot of money stuff. And my father was a very diligent worker. And if you ask him today, he will tell you he does not have enough money, but he always has, so it's just that he's very frugal with his money. And, it was often I heard, we don't have money for that, but it really was like he didn't have money for that thing. It wasn't that he didn't have money. So that's kind of one of the illuminating things of being an adult, right? You get to actually see your parents for who they are and realize like, oh, we had money. We weren't poor, but we didn't have all the extra stuff because that wasn't of value. But it made me grow up with this feeling of lack.
Mm.
There was a lot of just different things, environmental things that people would say, were you poor? Did you not have money for food or did you not have this? And it was like, no, it wasn't about money. It was about other things, but it instills you with this, it instilled me with this thought of lack and this, I'm going to have to work all the time in order to survive because that's what my father did. And that's what my mother did. Um, so it's really interesting as a child, you think 18 years and we put so much meaning into that and it affects us the rest of our lives. And our parents are doing the best that they can. But it's really so wild how the perceptions of things affect us. And even, I mean, you're 1000% correct. I mean, I remember my mom wanting my dad to do stuff around the house. And so I want stuff to happen around the house. And it's almost, not even inner child, but like you said, I've always been very sensitive. So I've just been like gathering all these other emotions that aren't even mine. And I'm like, I feel like I'm my mom right now. Like, what is going on? But also in the same token, like that's so beautiful because it's like, okay, that is not mine. Like I've been holding this thing and it's not mine. So I can give that back for my mom to process, you know? And that's been a huge thing is like a lot of, I would say, a lot of what we experience that could be called inner child stuff is really we've just taken on so much from other people. And I was listening to this meditation by Alaya Dowell, and she's
Mhm.
amazing. And one of the things she said was hand back everything that's not yours, because when you take on other people's stuff, one, you can't process it because it's not yours. And two, like that's their lesson. Like, so they didn't learn it. Like their soul was actually like, I have a grocery basket. I'm going to put everything in here. And when you go and take the apple out of their basket, the soul's like, hey, we were supposed to learn that lesson. And now you took it. So now we're going to have to figure out another way to do this. So it's like, oh, okay, it's actually helps me and it helps them to give back their stuff to process. So it's like, okay, great. Now I need to go through all of me and start handing back all of those things. And I even did that. I was like, you know, guides, spirits, beings, like I'm going to be in my spirit and I have my body here and its spirit and its higher self. And please remove from us anything that I took on as a child in the body, in the energy that's not mine. Like, let me hand that back so that the people that need that lesson can learn it and so that I can be free of that. Because that's the, you know, that's in my astrology is like taking care of people. I've taken care of people since a really young age. So if we think about that, that's the other thing too, is like I've been taking care of people my whole life. So if something happens, then I feel like I'm the one who has to come out of the pocket with it and it's all me. And it's like you're married. There's a lot more than just you. So the universe has been pushing me like very seriously to really challenge my beliefs. And it's like, and I appreciate it. Like I appreciate that tenacity because it's like, I don't want this anymore. Like I don't want all of this junk around me. So then it's like, okay, well, and I'm a tough cookie. So it's like, okay, we're gonna push you until you stop, like until you give up. Because I've been really dug in around some core beliefs. And it's like, we're just gonna go in there and root you out and put you somewhere new. And that's what's happening. Like you said, like you know, I have a house. I've been here for 3 years and I haven't really had time or the money to do anything with it. Like it's here, it works, it's great. And now all of a sudden, everything, like by the end of this year, my husband and I joke because it's going to be a brand new house. Whether it is because our desire or not, like it's happening. Like everything is needing to be replaced and fixed. And so it's really magical though because you were the one who actually said, "Oh, that's great. You're going to have a whole new place to move from." And that's totally true. Like next year, Jessica sitting in this house is going to be in a completely different place. It's going to be, you know, completely different. It's going to be mine with everything that I've done with it. And that just feels really expansive. So that's kind of that quantum thing too, right? All of this doesn't have to be linear. So I can just move to that place where, especially when I get scared about my expensive um water heater, moving to the place where I'm going to be living in a house where I don't have to worry about anything. Like everything's taken care of. If I want to shift professions, there's the space for that because, you know, all the broken things have been fixed. So I'm good for like 15 years. 15 years is a long time to be able to make transitions. So it's like, yes, I have the safety net of having a really good job, of having a business on the side, of my husband, you know, having a lot of prosperity right now. So it's like, okay, this is the time because if it would have been last year or the year before, it would have been devastating. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like just getting here moment, present moment with what's happening. Is it exactly what I wanted? No, I wanted zero debt this year. That's what I wanted, but I get new house instead. So okay, you know, we're gonna lean into that and allow the universe to work with the money,
Yeah.
all of my limiting beliefs around it.
Um, so there's a few threads that I kind of want to pull from what you were just sharing. One is that, and this is just my own belief, like if this doesn't resonate with any of y'all listening, you don't have to, but this just what I have found with working with my own energy and then with I see it a lot with clients too. Like my guide started to tell me when we're sending our energy back, like when we realize it's not ours, I always like to set the disclaimer that I'm allowing the universe to release any part of that that can be transmuted on its own. And I'm only sending back the portion that that person actually needs. And I'm sending it back with love, with light, with awareness. Like we don't ever want, and I'm not saying, like, I just wanted to clarify, like, I know Jessica doesn't, she's not like she's flinging it back, but like, just be careful that you're not like, oh, fucking get this off of me. Like, I don't want your karma, your whatever, like make sure you send it back with love and light and awareness, because you don't, you also, this is actually why I know this, because I had to learn it firsthand. So I was working with, a girl was coaching me, and I had never had this experience before working with a coach. And I just remember like I would have a session with her and then I would feel like shit, like maybe that afternoon or like the next day. And it was the weirdest thing. And all of a sudden I was like, something's not right here. So then when I was chatting with her, like she was, I don't know, it was like the next session we had, the way that she was processing the energy. First of all, she was trying to process all of my energy through her system, which is a big no-no anyway. And then what she was doing is, and again, like, right, we learn by experiencing. So I'm just kind of laughing because like I remember how shitty it felt. She was trying to process it. She couldn't. And then she was like throwing it back to me. So out of the blue, I'm like, why do I feel like shit? Like I felt, kind of good after the session. And then like 24 hours later, I feel like crap. And like, I had all this energy. So just make sure that you're asking the universe to transmute whatever it can. And the rest of it, you're going to send it back with love and light and awareness. That's kind of been my spiel ever since then, that experience. So what your guides are saying about the inner child stuff for you, whatever you want to call it, like either writing to your inner child, like when you have these things that come up, or like just kind of taking out a piece of paper and like writing to her or talking to her and explaining to her like kind of what your adult current day Jessica knows about what you're experiencing. Because she really does just need to hear, like, right, like you wanted your parents to tell you, but they didn't know how to, like, hey, you're safe, we're taken care of, we're provided, like we're gonna check in with the universe, we're gonna make sure everything's okay. I feel like that could be helpful for you. Does that like kind of resonate or make?
Yeah, 1000%. And that's really helpful too, because I'm like, okay, I've got it figured out so we can just move forward. But you're right. We need to tend to those emotions and feelings and remind ourselves, like, yes, I may have it figured out and we are safe. And that actually makes sense why it's like at times it'll kind of come up again. Cause it's like, even though I know I have it figured out in my mind, I still need to feel safe and be reminded that everything's okay. This is exactly what we chose, and that we're moving along and we're safe and there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah. And the one last thing that I want to say, um, so for those of you who are watching or listening who are single, I am also single. I think a lot of times, like we can hear somebody share who's married and we're like, oh, well, they're not alone. They have support. Um, Something that I've had to heal through and like had to really learn is that even if we are alone, right? If you're single, again, I'm using the air quotes, we're not alone, right? We have people who love us, we have family, we have friends, we also have the universe supporting us, we also have our energetic support team. So right, that's your angels, your guides, your ancestors. Tuning into that energy, which honestly I feel like is another big reason that I had to go through this phase, is I had to learn to rely on my energetic support team. I had to learn to ask for help. And even of people too, like even of family and friends. I was a person that I never, ever, ever asked for help. Like I felt like I had to do everything by myself. So of course the universe forced me into, okay, we're going to force you to ask for help. We're going to force you. It's funny because my throat, like all of a sudden it's doing its thing. Like I had to learn to use my voice to say, like, I have this need. please help me, right? I can't do this by myself. Like, please support me. This is so funny. I've never had this happen on a chat. So I'm going to say that I'm done talking for now because I have another call in an hour that I have to do a lot of talking for my workshop. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, thank you for that. It's so funny too, because I'm definitely a lone wolf. And that's where, marriage has been challenging. Like everything you do, you got to talk about it. You got to work with somebody else to do that. So it's so interesting. It's like whatever you're good at, that's kind of your south node stuff. The universe is going to, and your higher self and your spirit is going to push you into the uncomfortable piece and say, okay, let's learn some more. And I just find it so fascinating. Like, I think astrology has really opened that up for me where I realized, like, yes, I was, walking down the aisle and I chose these different experiences and I put them in my basket. So it very much was a choice. This isn't happening to me. And when that choice was made, it was like, oh, okay, and you can do this. Like, I know I can do this, but I need to learn, I can grow. And that's just so wonderful because it's like, oh, okay, well, it's great. Kind of the deck is already stacked. We know we can expand in these ways, and we just want to have these experiences. So when I look at it in that perspective, then it's like no matter what is happening to me, I know the universe is supporting me. This is just a beautiful way to have these different experiences and to see what I'm going to do with it. Like, am I going to lean into love and ask for guidance, or am I going to shut down in fear? And if I shut down in fear, like, how long is that going to be? Is that going to be for a moment? Is that going to be for a day, a week? Am I going to do that for years? Like, and that happens for some people, and there's no judgment. And that's where I say, the sooner that we realize, like, oh, yep, this is happening, and then we can ask for support and we can get back into alignment. Like, that's how we know we're growing. Like, that's how I knew I was growing when I was like in a completely different triggered reality and I realized it. And I said, oh, okay, I need to just get out of this building. I need to ask for support. I need to be by myself. And then I can get into alignment around it so I can actually make some good decisions. So yeah, we are constantly blessed with opportunities to learn. And for me right now, it is money and trust and figuring it all out in the, aspect of a relationship. So thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you shared. That's really helpful. And I'm definitely going to try out that advice because I can even feel like as you're saying it, it's like I can feel it landing inside of me. Like, yeah, Jessica, let's do that. Let's feel better about this.
Yeah. Thank you for receiving. I feel like I always feel very like when somebody trusts you, because we're like we know how intimate the things are that clients share with us. And I feel like I always feel so honored like when I'm able to receive insights for somebody or to, to just be like that's a very intimate area of somebody's life to kind of be rifling around in. So thank you for yeah. And thank you all for listening. Yeah. I also want to say, like, I know that we've kind of been varied in our topics. If there's things that y'all want us to talk about, if there's things that you're like, yeah, like I'm really interested in this topic. I mean, Jessica and I feel like we're both, we want to give y'all what you want to hear and like what's on your heart and what's on your mind. So drop in the comments or just reach out to us, on our platforms. All the information is, it's all there, right?
Let us know whatever
Yeah.
inspires you. And we've had some people interacting with us, and that's really helped. So yeah, let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll be glad. I mean, we're going to have some guests coming up in the next few shows. So even with that, if there's a guest you think that would be great for us to interview, we would love to do that too.
Thank you. See, you're much better at articulating that.
Oh, it's all good. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on In the Flow.
Bye.
I can see the stars align, dance around the moon every night. And now my eyes are open wide, and the sky has never looked so bright. Now I don't need to see the road to believe, to believe.